If you would, describe your training with the Lunar Landing Research Vehicle and the Lunar Landing Training Vehicle. What was it like to try to fly it, and how valuable was that experience during your mission?
Start at the end and work back. It turned out to be very valuable. Originally, when they started first talking about lunar landing, and wasn't known what technique would be used to go there, I was at Edwards, and we started thinking about how you would simulate flying over the moon. And that was a natural thing for us because in-flight simulations was our thing out at Edwards. We did lots of in-flight simulations, tried to duplicate other vehicles or duplicate trajectories or duplicate this or duplicate that, make something fly like something else. It was just what we did. Don Bellman and Gene Matranga, two engineers, and myself, to some extent, started talking about how you might do this. And our first idea was for if we ever needed for training, was to have the spacecraft, and we didn't know what the spacecraft would look like, have the spacecraft carried on another vehicle and make that other vehicle be something that would create the conditions that would duplicate the lunar gravity and lunar vacuum and so on. Then our thought was, when the vehicle gets built, we can put it on top of this carrier, and they can actually fly it just like they would over the moon, and they could do it at Edwards or wherever, and learn how it flies. Then we decided that was going to be a pretty complicated project. And what we should do before we did that was build a little device, a little one-man device, which would just investigate the qualities and requirements of flying in the lunar, to build the database from which we would build the bigger thing to carry the real spacecraft. So we actually devised such a craft. It looked like a tin Campbell soup can sitting on top of some legs with a gimbal engine underneath it, and that became the basis for what went out as a requirement for bid to build the LLRV, Lunar Landing Research Vehicle. It was not known at this time that there would be a lunar module. It was a direct descent and Earth orbiting rendezvous, and other strategies were still being considered. Matter of fact, the lunar module came after the Lunar Landing Research Vehicle. Fortunately, the characteristics and the size and the inertias and so on of this training device were very much like the lunar module, and that was strictly fortuitous. And so it turned out that the people this is after I'd left there, Joe Walker, Don Malik, and so on, went through the project of flying this thing and finding out what the characteristics of a machine flying in a lunar environment would be. And subsequent to that, or at that time, it was decided to go the lunar orbital rendezvous method and build a lunar module. And it turned out that was just about the right size.
Yeah.
So after that, they made the Lunar Landing Training Vehicle, which was designed to be even more LEM-like, so that would give you a good representation. And in fact, it did. And all the pilots, I think, to my knowledge, everyone thought it was an extremely important part of the preparation for the lunar landing attempt. And you may know the lunar landing The lunar module was designed to be able to make an automatic landing, but to my knowledge, no one ever did.
So the simulation, how close a simulation was this training to the actual landing? I mean, did you feel it was almost, were you in for any surprises when you actually had to land it differently than what your simulation?
It was harder to fly than the lunar module, more complicated, and subject to the problems that wind and gusts and turbulence and so on introduce that you don't have on the moon, and the systems were somewhat choppier or less smooth than the actual lunar module, both propulsion and attitude control systems were. So the lunar module was a pleasant surprise.
You might discuss the incident you had with the Lunar Landing Research Vehicle when it crashed, and what was your involvement in the investigation and recovery process in that? Did they be part of all of that?
Well, it's fairly well covered in a variety of documents. Just say that for unknown reason, the pressurant gas, I was conducting a simulated lunar approach and lost the pressurant gas to the attitude control rockets. And when you lose attitude control, why it slowly just diverges, not very slowly. And there was very little time to analyze alternatives at that point. It was just because I was so close to the ground, below 100 feet in altitude. So just again, time when you make a quick decision, you departed. I did not participate in the investigation of that because I had otherwise assigned duties at the time, so others did that. So we lost 3 of those vehicles, and it was a contrary machine and a risky machine, but a very useful one.